Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Talks podcast organized by the Language Development and Support Unit at the Central University of Technology, Free State. Once again, we're looking at matters that deal with language, multilingualism, but today specifically we're trying to look at indigenous languages. And we are intentional in that we're including South African Sign Language to be part and parcel of our discussion today. In our previous episodes, we looked at Sesotho, we had a look at how then other official languages, this is before South African Sign Language is made official as one of the 12 languages of South Africa. But today we want to actually say, let's have a discussion in terms of how then we're having this inclusion of South African Sign Language within higher education, within the South African landscape. How are we then accommodating them? How are we including the deaf community within our universities? Ladies and gentlemen, today for the discussion, we are joined by two, I always say, esteemed guests. And I think I'm not at fault to repeat that today as well, to say, Kisere dikwakwari kajeno chena, Kisere dinatla, Kisere ditibi samanete. As it is tradition within the podcast, I hardly say who is who. Kekere seso semonate hasipunywa kimongasona mme re qale kwano ka wena o itsebise le setjhaba sa CUT hore wena o mang.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Simone. I work in the disability unit at CUT. I'm the disability communication and support officer. I work specifically with supporting and creating access for students with disabilities, with a special focus on deaf students and South African Sign Language users in general. From my experience as an educational South African Sign Language interpreter, I bring that into the space. I've been an educational interpreter for almost 10 years now, but building from that I bring into my work as a disability support person.
No, thank you very much, and we truly appreciate you being here to share your expertise with us.
Thank you.
I think it will be just fair for us to say, who are you within the CUT community and what is it that you bring within the CUT?
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Motagi, for having me this morning. My name is Pule Phindane. I'm a full professor from the Department of Language and Social Sciences. I would say my passion is on indigenous languages. As you can even dwell in my CV, my most publication relied on indigenous languages. How do they contribute in the teaching and learning? That's what I am currently doing.
We're getting. That's exactly what we want to do, especially when you talk to issues of teaching and learning. Because we've had South African Sign Language as a language that is spoken, yes. But now it has been officialized. And now we want it included within our spaces in teaching and learning. And I think that is the core of what we want to discuss here, yes. As an indigenous language. Because sometimes when we talk about indigenous languages, we want to cancel out other languages, yes. Also including South African Sign Language. Medupri, you're coming with 10 years of experience within the education of South African Sign Language and the community thereof. The challenges, when we start with our conversation so that we know exactly where we're going, the challenges that you know that are pressing challenges facing South African Sign Language and the education system, what will be some of those?
The deaf community has been excluded in spaces for a very long time. And only recently, I'm talking about the last 20 years, yes. Have they been included in higher education sectors. In CUT, even more recently than that, 2 years ago, last year, we started including deaf students in higher education. The challenges that they face is challenges of inclusion, challenges of social justice, linguistic justice that they are not experiencing. Inclusion looks not only at inclusion in a classroom, but inclusion in the whole community. And that is where social justice and linguistic justice comes in, where, I mean, we can't just include them in classrooms and forget about them and for the rest of whatever they are doing at university.
Because I think one of the key things that the university speaks to is extracurricular and involvement as well, being part of the community beyond just going to a lecture hall and then getting the education and then you leave. We have sports, we have dean of students with all the activities that they have, and we need to see how then we're including them there.
Yes.
We have those discussion in detail later on as well. El Professor, I think since you were inaugurated to full professorship, we have not had a discussion formally like this.
Yes.
Let me maybe then start there and say congratulations. And I think we're saying congratulations coming from the Language Development and Support Unit, knowing exactly that the advocacy that you bring and to have a CUT full professor in the promotion and development of African languages is truly critical in terms of what we're doing here.
Yes.
Re ke pheta hape re a o lebohisa haholo fela ka mosebetsi wa hao o re fa tsela ya hore na re a tlameha re hlahlathe re tsamaya ka tsela efeng re shebe fela he Prof your academic journey. And, Simone or Mr. Preez speaks to South African Sign Language.
Yes.
What I want us to do is to marry the two, to say, let's look at other indigenous languages and some of the challenges, because I'll take, with your work, you would have looked at other, maybe specifically Sesotho and maybe Xhosa and all that.
Yes.
Without looking at South African Sign Language, because at the time, it was not an official language of the university and even of the country as well.
Yes.
With the other languages, what has been your academic journey? What has been the one thing that you're saying you've been challenged in promoting these languages that you advocate for?
Well, once more, thank you so much. It's a very wide open question that could even take me the whole session.
We can actually relax and just hear you speak. We're good with that.
Let me start by saying my journey started when I was still a school teacher in 1991. I was teaching science as well as Sesotho and English. Yeah. That's how it came about. Then when I get to the university to upgrade my qualification, I felt so interested in the indigenous languages to such an extent when I go back home, I have to teach other teachers, existing teachers, how to teach the language. Because in most cases, people just think that if you can speak the language, you know how to impart knowledge on that one. That's where the teaching and learning comes from. At some stage, you'll find a teacher in the classroom does not know how to teach the language, but can speak the language. Yeah. We do take it for granted that this one can also impart knowledge with that language, which is not the case. So we have to formalize it to ensure that everyone who is teaching the language has the pedagogy that has been included in his work. Well, from teaching as a teacher, then I also joined the University of Free State as a language and research coordinator. That was the unit specifically according to the language policy, the framework of 2003, that all the 11 languages, official languages, has to have their language units in their universities. That is the institution of higher learning. That's when I joined the Language Research Center at the University of Free State. There we were busy developing the indigenous language, our target being Sesotho. And other official languages were also in other institutions of higher learning. That's where I started the growth of working along the indigenous language also managed to be polished in that department, because we were doing terminology development in order maybe to try to be nearer to other languages like the well-developed Afrikaans and English. So we have to go back and try to develop those African languages. That's when my research started, and my niche specifically was on the teaching and learning of African languages.
All right, then. You speak to the LRCs.
Yes.
Which are now disbanded, I think, from 2007 or 8, somewhere
Yes,
there.
2007.
Seven, yes. The significance, because you're saying your niche.
Yes.
You took it from the language research centers, which we no longer have.
Yes.
How did that then take away the withdrawals from this disbursement of the LRCs to say we're not going to have other Professor Phindanes who will now gain the niche in terms of teaching and learning,
Yes.
the niche in terms of terminology development from these LRCs? What went wrong with the LRCs? I think that is the core question. What went wrong?
Yeah, yes, you know what? Because all the language research development centers were basically on the geographical language, where the language is spoken.
Yes.
They are not all together being disbanded. In some institutions, they've been transformed. You go to the Fort Hare University, they were not disbanded as the University of Free State or other universities. Even when you go to Northwest, they have been just transformed into a unit. No longer Language Research Development Center, but a unit that still has that culture of development of the language. You go to Stellenbosch, still right now the Language Research Centers at Stellenbosch is no longer there, but it has been transformed. And it has been grown to such an extent, it is no longer only interested at Afrikaans. They've got East closer, Afrikaans and English in them, yes. Whatever they are doing in 3 languages. The mode of communication, it is threefold. Then you also go to the, which one? The one that is in Grahamstown.
The university in Grahamstown will be...
Yes, the Language Research Center was at Grahamstown, but that university, I'm not quite sure what I forgot the name of the university. It is a known university.
All right, we'll get there. Yes.
The very same that their mandate was to look at the affairs of English, but they also transformed it in such a way that they are including English, Sesotho, and Afrikaans. It's closer as well. So to say that politically they were dismantled, they were destroyed, or they even, yes, but the mandate is still there. When you go back to the University of Free State, the LRC is not there, but you look at the multilingual center that has been developed there. It has the very same mandate of the LRCs.
All right,
Yes.
then, Mrs. Dupree. We talk when we start off the officiation of South African Sign Language as one of the official languages of the country. Let's look at the practical and significance of having it officialized. And what does it mean in plain sight? Because sometimes we say it has been officialized, but what does it mean? It was not officialized. What did it mean then? But now it has been officialized. What is the difference? Why should we be excited? Why should the deaf community be excited about that? Then after that, we talk about what has been done or what can we do to make sure that the excitement does not die early without any recognition going forward.
So thank you for the question. The officialization of South African Sign Language as our 12th language is very important. It is, but without implementation, it means nothing. But what it means in practicality for our deaf community is that they are being recognized, their identity, their culture. They themselves are a linguistic minority. So now it is almost elbowing their way into spaces that they weren't allowed in before, making space for them where space didn't exist. It's the mandate is there now. It has to be, I want to say forced, but yeah, they can take up space now, where before, in the plain, simple English way to say it, before they were not allowed in many spaces, but the officialization now means that they can take up space and that they themselves, their language, their culture is being recognized, leading to CUT's multilingual language policy, including South African Sign Language there. That is also influencing other universities to follow suit. The ripple effect we can feel it happening, we can see it happening.
Yes.
And it is, I'm getting goosebumps sitting here because of the excitement. And to make sure that that excitement doesn't die down, it means to continue the conversation, to continue creating awareness, to continue to place deaf people and the deaf community in spaces they weren't before.
Professor speaks about getting the ignition, the light into the language, and in terms of teaching and learning,
Yes.
from his early days as a teacher, going to the LRCs. For you, in the community of the deaf, when you're not deaf, but you sign, you advocate for South African Sign
Yes.
Language and the deaf community. Where do we take this? Where does it come from? Because it is important for us to understand the background in terms of how you get to this position where you sit in there as a not part of the deaf community with a capital D, and we need to make that
Yes.
very the distinction. But you are part of the deaf community
Yes.
in a way. But you're not deaf.
Yes.
But you chose to be part and parcel of this community. What indicates that decision?
So there's a big difference between the deaf culture and the deaf community.
Yes.
Me, with my background as a sign language interpreter, as an advocate for the deaf, I am part and parcel of the deaf community.
Yes.
I am not part of deaf culture. That is a very big and important distinction to make. Because it is not my language. I will never be able to own deaf culture. I will never be able to own sign language. But I am there to facilitate, to be the voice of those who have something to say. And this comes from, seeing what happens to linguistic minorities in our country every day, and being in a privileged position of being English and Afrikaans, and knowing what it feels like to be able to get into that space, and knowing also then, seeing with my eyes what it feels like and how it influences you not being able to get into that space. So it is a very important distinction, and I am very proud to say I am part of the deaf community.
Yes.
As an advocate and as an interpreter.
No. We get here, especially the culture part, because I think before we end the conversation, we talk about the inclusion, not only us doing things for South African Sign
Yes.
Language, because there's this common saying that we can't do for us without us. And I think that will be key as well when we go forward with the discussion to say, how do we include those who are part of the culture as opposed only the community?
Yes.
Let me go to Prof. Prof, in your inaugural address, you specifically look at language, education, teaching and learning, indigenous language promotion and everything else.
Yes.
What I'm interested in is the key that we're seeing language as a key driver in terms of transformation of higher education. When in your career, starting from as a teacher until you are inaugurated to full professorship, indigenous language promotion, language development, and seeing it being expressed and working within the university spaces, basic school education, even in community for sociolinguistics, you did those.
Yes.
But what is the significance in terms of transformation of our institution, for instance?
Well, once more, thank you so much, Doc. You know what? Like I said in the inaugurational speech that we do have policies.
Yeah.
Which is the challenge. The policy has already opened for all 12 languages in South Africa that they should be getting parity, they should be getting everything to do. That is the freedom.
Yeah.
Everything is basically on our hands. That is in terms of the practice. That is where we've got the problem. In most cases, even here at the university, we are given the leeway that we can communicate in one of the indigenous language, which is Sesotho. We can also communicate in Afrikaans as well as in English, but still, people still choose to communicate in English. So in terms of the developments, there are so many that has been happening. Not only here at CUT, so many institutions of higher learning, they have made a very craft development in terms of language of indigenous languages, in terms of teaching as well as learning in your own African languages. More has been done, but it's just that people choose. And immediately when you choose a site where you know for a fact that the policy is fighting for you to keep on utilizing your language, or maybe using your language to express yourself, then that is the problem that I see. It's a challenge in both every way. Let me just categorically put it this way. Institutions of higher learning, they have done a very spade work. Everything has been done. I know for a fact for the past, it was in during COVID. 2020, yes. We were translating the tutorials as well as the study guides from the University of South Africa. It was a project that took us almost 3 years. In other words, when you get to the internet, you want a tutorial letter in English as well as Sesotho. It is there. It also assists the student when they are crafting their assignments. You start reading English, then you go to your indigenous language. Even if you can respond in the English, but for a mere fact that you know for a fact that I do understand the questions. I often say to people, in most cases, the examiners, they often use verbs that are very tricky. They don't just speak as normally as they teach us in class. They can just say enunciate the following.
Yeah.
Then you start wondering, what is the meaning of enunciate? Tabulate, instead of mentioning. So those kind are difficult action verbs when a student has to respond to the examination paper. So what I'm saying is that we got all chances of clarifying what we got. Like I'm saying, even here at CUT, I'm the first person when I came here at CUT, Sesotho was being taught in English. Setswana was being taught in English, and Setswana as well as isiXhosa and Sesotho, they were placed in the same classroom. So I started by dividing these people that each language has to be taught in its own language, in its own mother tongue. So I think that's how we have to work for it.
Speaking exactly to the culture and the community, because I could be part of the community of Botswana because I live within the Botswanas, I can speak a bit of that. But I can never own the culture. But I can be part of the community. And what was happening, the injustice is that 3 cultures in one lecture hall, whereas it cannot necessarily work because we express ourselves differently, we speak differently, and all that.
Yes.
Mrs. Zupri, the excitement that we talk to, how do we translate that? It is policy, CUT has it, South Africa has it, many universities, they do have South African Sign Language recognized as an official language as well. You can go to other departments, especially Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. Some have that recognized. But how do we then start the efforts of translating these policies into action? Could be measurable actions. I always hate measurable because you just go there and measure, then you're okay. But into functional and operational takes and activities that we see on a daily basis.
Thank you for the question. It's an important question. We see a lot of ticking of boxes when it comes to policies. We all want to cover our bases, we all want to make provision, but only when we are faced with a challenge, then we start to become reactive. When we see, oh, there's a deaf person, now we need to try and make this person feel included. And that is not the correct way of doing it. We need to be reactive. And I think that in itself will make such a big difference and will make sure that the policies are being implemented. If we look at something as simple as universal design for learning, as well as universal design in general, we don't wait for the fire to break out before we build the fire escape. We need to be able to make provision to be as inclusive as possible for everyone, not just think, how can I make this inclusive for a deaf person? Something as simple as putting subtitles on a video. It's not just important for a deaf person. It is important for every single person that English is not the mother tongue. And most of us, I can't count on both of my hands how many English people I know at CUT whose mother tongue is English. Most of us, we come this is our second, third, fourth language. So something as simple as putting subtitles on a video, it helps everyone, not just a deaf person. And I think that is the attitude that we need to be able to implement. Not be reactive, but rather be proactive in universal design. And that will translate to the excitement as well.
El Professor, you know, the key thing that Mrs. Dupree talks to, right? We see there's policies that we have and we want to practicalize them.
Yes.
At CUT, the implementation plan will speak to translanguaging as maybe then one of the key multilingual pedagogies that we want to implement to try and assist students for access in terms of the content. But there are scholars that will argue that translanguaging is not inclusive to all and it doesn't work as much as we think it does. What can we do as a CUT with a multilingual language policy, a proposed implementation plan with challenges that other scholars will actually talk to make sure that we're translating our policy into action and also we are inclusive and we have frameworks that are inclusive to everyone, especially when we talk to multilingual pedagogies in student support and also in teaching and learning?
Well, thank you so much, Doc. Let me quickly remind you that it was Rhodes University that I was referring to.
Yes.
It was done to me. Yes, I must say that there are those scholars who does not even maybe try to talk about translanguaging. But in terms of keeping the multilingualism, translanguaging is one of them. Code switching is one of them. So those are some of the elements that assist us in order. Remember, we are not saying that translanguaging should be a language. We are saying it should be a device that is utilized to ensure that teaching and learning becomes even easier for the students. That's how it's supposed to be work. Then if it is overworked or taken as a language, that's where there will be researchers who does not feel good about it. But research has shown that when you just use translanguaging, code switching, there's a number of them, students have a clearer idea of what the content is saying or is leading to. So I do support the translanguaging myself. Yes, even though I know for a fact I'm from other language, but in order to assist those who are doing the content, like engineering, it still suffices to use the translanguaging.
No, I appreciate that you do actually advocate for translanguaging. We're having, just for noting, we're having translanguaging workshops for academics, for student support as well. So please, when you see the call, do answer to that. This is just me doing advertising for the unit quickly there. So please do answer the call for those translanguaging workshops. We truly believe it could be one of the things that we use. And one of the things that we always say from the unit side is we're trying to see if it can work with accommodation that we are open-minded to look at other things that can actually be beneficial to the students as well, and the call for teaching and learning.
Fortunately, if I can just interject there,
Definitely.
I do have a PhD student who completed the translanguaging, Dr. Mkumatela.
Oh, yes,
Wow.
yes.
She was under my supervision then.
Or the lecturer from the Velcom campus. No, that's impressive. That's impressive. Mrs. Dupree, you see, Prof will talk to a whole lot of issues, but when we look at especially translanguaging and even the challenge, though I'm a promoter and advocate for translanguaging as well, I always try to look at what others are saying. Now, when we talk to South African Sign Language and the deaf epistemology and pedagogy as well, we're looking at issues of it being more visual.
Yes.
How do we accommodate that visualness, if there's a word like that? Oh my God. How do we accommodate that in the support structures that we're trying to make sure that they are available within our community? And we are inclusive. And I don't like to be inclusive as a word that is functional in us going forward. We should just exist and have ourselves existing as one, though we usually saying we one with these pockets of how we make ourselves one.
Yes.
So the visualness of South African Sign Language and the deaf epistemology and the pedagogy as well, how do we accommodate that?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Thank you. Like you were saying about the inclusive, in a perfect world, we would not need something like a disability unit, because we would be inclusive enough. So I think to answer to that, deaf epistemology is visual and spatial.
Yes.
That is how they perceive knowledge and information, and how it becomes part and parcel of themselves. So again, without beating a dead horse, universal design.
Yes.
We as the disability unit, we do speak with lecturers. We do host inclusive education workshops, inclusive pedagogy workshops. I think that is a very important starting point for universal design in teaching and learning, being open for different ways of contributing in a classroom, different ways of doing assessments, not just be rigid in your pen and paper ways of doing assessments, not being rigid in just talking your whole classroom through. That will lose interest, because inclusion in a classroom is not just putting an interpreter there. It is because an interpreter is just translating from English to South African Sign Language. And that can be exhausting to watch. It can be exhausting and information gets dropped. But if you put a slideshow that's visually interesting along with the interpreter. If you're playing a video, you have captions and the interpreter. That also helps develop the English language for the deaf student. If you are just open-minded, use different ways of teaching, use different ways of assessment. That is, for teaching and learning, that is extremely important to create an inclusive culture and a harmonious environment for everyone, not only deaf students. But important thing is that we are working closely with lecturers, with inclusive pedagogy trainings, to make them aware that there are different ways of doing it, to be able to reach everyone.
So, and this will actually extend to you, Prof, as well, right? I have this question to say, don't you think it could be better with the universal design and be inclusive and all that? We have in the university, and I'll speak specifically to CUT now, to say we have 4 official languages. And we should be, the efforts that you are taking for South African Sign Language in terms of being included within the classrooms, can't we have efforts that are collaborated, that the official languages of the university could actually be included in those that you are doing, as opposed to having a South African Sign Language event? We have a CUT language event where we are inclusive in all that we're saying is official within the university. Because what I'm worried about, the disability unit will do 1, 2, 3. The LDSU will come and do 3, 4, 5. But if we could work together for the promotion of what we call indigenous languages within the university, I think we could achieve a much better thing than what we're doing as individuals.
That's the dream.
Professor, just to you, I want us to actually look at it from this side, right? We have an academic culture where students are expected to transition into this English medium and all that. And that is what I think Mrs. Preez is talking to as well. The universal design of university, specifically CUT. In your opinion, is it fit enough to accommodate the multilingual language policy that we have? Because sometimes we have a policy because DHEAD will expect us to have policy. The Human Rights Commission will come and say, do you have a language policy right now that is active? Then they'll take it. So no, it's there. But universal design, are we designed to a point where even as strategy 2026 to 2030, does it talk to anything that promotes this, that we're having a policy to?
Thank you so much for the good question. I think this one is it's one of the challenges that we are all faced with. Because remember, when we get to the institution of higher learning, that is almost the end result of schooling. But most cases, my point is here, in most cases, before we had students who come from the township schools, where we've got the basic of indigenous languages. But currently, most of our learners are coming from the so-called Model C schools, whereby English is taken as a home language. Then the student come to the university with non-indigenous language at all. Remember, our policy also open for the indigenous languages. That's where the problem is, because when they wanted to to check whether are we implementing our language practices within the policy, what the policy says. That's where the challenge is going to be, because most of our learners, our students here at the university, they are doing English as a home language. So there are no indigenous language. They rather do Sesotho as a first additional language or a third language. Yes, that's where the challenge is, because the very same student will say that my home language is English. So there is no way that I fall into the indigenous languages. That's where the catch is. Yes.
And we find the challenge being, even though they'll claim home language to be English, proficiency, it becomes a challenge in that the moment you're not a part of a culture, and I think I'm going to use that, you're not a part of a particular language's or community's culture. We are a part, I think everyone in South Africa is part and parcel of the English community, but not the culture thereof. Therefore, we can have a discussion like we're having here, but we're not going to own the language and say we belong within this particular language.
You're correct.
The transition, we have the Bella Act for basic education going forward. My worry with what we're talking in terms of transition is, are we truly ready as higher education to take those students who are coming within our institutions in 5 years? It starts with the grade 4, it's actually being incremental to grade 12, where in terms of percentages, it will be 80, 20, 30, 70, and all that. But by the time they come to university, most of the percentage will have gone to them being taught in an indigenous language, to a specific community, to a specific culture. Is our universities ready for that reality? Because to me, it seems basic education is busy drafting their own policies that are not linked with what higher education is saying. How are we going to deal with that?
Yes, I think, thank you once more, Doc. I think it is not that easy. I must say it's a challenge by itself, but learning that even the same Bella Act, most of the officials that are driving it, they do not understand it. It's a challenge to them because, remember, we've got 12 languages in South Africa. And in most cases, there are those schools where you find that the most language that is used, indigenous language, is Sesotho. But there are Zulus there. There are Xhosas there. There are Tswanas there. So it's a challenge by itself. Hence, there is a road show that is needed. The last time I asked, because I serve at the audit committee of Free State Education, the last time that I asked them, did they, invited stakeholders outside the Department of Education? They said yes, they did. So I'm quite sure when they are doing their road shows, they will also invite the institutions of higher learning to have their sense. Because we know for a fact when we are going to house those learners at the university, it's going to be a challenge. For the university itself,
Yeah, it's going to be a huge challenge.
Huge challenge.
I'm trying to look at it and thinking, now we have South African Sign Language being included in this. So because you have a school in Tabanchu, Bartimia, for instance, they've been taught in South African Sign Language from grade 1 until grade 12, right? We have challenges, and we're not going to ignore those in terms of the quality of the teachers and all those. We'll look at that. But the reality is, the more inclusive we want to be, it means we need to increase the numbers of deaf students or South African Sign Language users within university spaces. But we're increasing the numbers in terms of the students and enrollment, but the academic support and professional support does not change. It's not accommodated for. Because today we're having 2 students that use South African Sign Language. The accommodation of those students is a struggle within the university, but we need to report that we are inclusive when it comes to higher education. So no, we do have students who are signing. Medupre. That brings me to this point that when we're talking about this, the challenge of getting the students we see, but it talks to a bigger issue of curriculum reimagination and academic development. And we start with Professor Phindane, who goes and stands in front of the class or a lecture hall, but he can't sign. And you have a Simone or a Tabiso Ditedu somewhere there who is a South African Sign Language interpreter but not an academic.
Yes.
How do we then reimagine curriculum when we're having these shortfalls in terms of how we present this curricula, even if it is reimagined, even if it is inclusive, even if we're having all these interpreters, even the academics going for culture training in terms of accommodating deaf and South African Sign Language, but ultimately the student is sitting there all confused because they don't feel part and parcel of the university beyond just those two people they are seeing there. How do we go and reimagine our curriculum and develop as an academic institution?
Wow. That's a difficult one. It is a continuous struggle.
Yes.
And I think at its roots, sign language interpreting needs to be professionalized. I think with doing that, we can ensure that even though our interpreters are not necessarily academics, but they have the qualifications that they need to be there. They understand the environment that they are working in. That is an ongoing challenge that we are experiencing in South Africa's interpreting community, where interpreters are not professionalized. They do not hold qualifications. They haven't themselves experienced higher education. They do not know the structures. They do not understand the terminology being used. And that is such a hindrance to our deaf students, because if there's in Parliament there's Wilma Drechen. She is very outspoken that she needs an interpreter on the same qualification that she is, because I want what I am saying as a deaf person to be portrayed in the way that I am saying it. You can't water down what I am saying because you don't understand what I am saying. And that is the big challenge that we are facing. It does not solve everything. Absolutely not, because short of creating a deaf university in South Africa, we are going to have deaf learners in mainstream universities who make use of South African Sign Language interpreters. Even though that is not enough, that is the reasonable accommodation that we can provide. I just want to tell a little story about how transformation, what it looks like in an academic setting for a deaf student. Recently, there was a master's student, deaf master's student, doing a master's in South African Sign Language and Deaf Culture. And she presented her whole master's thesis in South African Sign Language, her whole master's thesis. And that is justice, that is linguistic justice, that is equity, that is dignity, where she did not have to struggle through the English. She did not have to be hindered by a language to be able to prove herself and to prove her knowledge and her worth. And that is transformation in higher education.
I'm interested in this master's student and having done their postgrad, more specifically in South African Sign Language, about South African Sign Language. How does it look, the output? You see, now in my mind, I'm thinking, is it a video? What is it? Like, how does it look like the end product? Because if I'm doing my master's, I'll write whether in Sesotho or English, and then I'll give them a thesis, a dissertation booklet, and then I know I'm done. How does it look?
I'm also curious. I have not seen it with my own eyes, but I believe that it was in video format. There should have been an interpreter doing a voiceover, probably captions. And probably a written work submitted alongside it. That is how I imagine it. I am speaking under correction.
No, don't worry. You're actually saying this is how it should be done. Like, ideally, this is what then we will accommodate and try to appreciate, to say, if we were to do it as CUT, let's try and see if we can have it as a video and have a book as well and have 1, 2, 3 interpreter. Because I think if they did not do certain things, they might watch this and say, maybe we can include 1, 2, 3 so that it becomes more accessible. And we appreciate that. But before I come to you, Prof, there's a point that you talked to, which sometimes I have a problem with, right? Especially when it comes to the deaf community and some of the things that they will want. And you will correct me. You're talking about someone in Parliament who will look for an interpreter at the same qualification as they are. Number one, it raises the fact, the challenge of, is the interpreter paid the same as she is because they're having the same qualification? Number one. Number two, if South African Sign Language is going to be an official language, like any other language, you don't have a Mosotho, an Afrikaans person wanting an interpreter on the same level.
Yes.
There was an issue again that it was common within, I think, the community that you want a preferred interpreter. You can only work with this person, which cannot work. I think it has some challenges as well. That we're trying to, and this is just a view from my view, is that we want to egg the South African Sign Language as opposed to it being used as any other language. Yes, we understand the shortfalls, we understand where it comes from. But the moment we need an interpreter with same qualification, my preferred interpreter, it can only come from this area because this is the area I come from. It becomes a challenge in us achieving this that we want to achieve, and just making sign language an official language and making sure that it is accessible, it has the same rights equitably or equally as other official languages.
Yes, that is a sensitive topic.
Yes, yes.
And I am careful to answer it. Because we need to understand that sign language and deafness lies at the intersection of disability and language minority.
Definitely.
So it is a little bit more sensitive. I mean, without an interpreter, there's no access. It's not optional. And why shouldn't I have specific prerequisites for the interpreter that I use? It is sensitive.
Super sensitive.
It is sensitive.
Let me not put you in that pocket. Let's leave it at it's sensitive, and we understand the challenges, and we understand the discourse that is happening around that. And hopefully, because the officiation just happened, we'll get more discussions, more scholars talking on the issue, and one day we'll sit and have a discussion where we openly have an opinion and we can actually educate in terms of what needs to be done. Because right now we're still trying to find our footing, and when it's trying to find your footing, you need the shoes that you're comfortable with, as opposed to anyone who has now ran the field for 100 kilometers or even more than that. I don't want you to get arrested. Professor, you see, curricular reimagination and academic development that I spoke to with Mrs. Dupree as well.
Yes.
To have this education being inclusive with the other indigenous languages, we have a language policy that then will have Sesotho, Afrikaans, English, and South African Sign Language in no particular order, of course. But in the university, if you go to IPQA and then you ask for stats, you have isiZulu, isiXhosa, and other official languages, Afrikaans, or is part of the official. isiZulu, isiXhosa, Xitsonga, you can even have international students. How do we then reimagine this curricula, and especially linguistically looking at it, when we have in this vast languages within the university space, but we need to be accommodative? One key thing, especially that we took from 2020, we said no student should be left behind.
Oh, yes.
So how do we do that within the Language Development and Support Unit, within the Disability Center, looking at maybe South African Sign Language and other cultural aspects as well, to be inclusive to a point where those who are speaking are coming with a culture that is not accommodated within the languages that we're saying are officialized in the university? How do we accommodate them?
Well, thank you so much for the question. I think it's a little bit challenge because, the language policy of our institutions, it also demarcated around the province, the provincial languages that has been earmarked. So it's a little bit difficult. Hence, you see those who are speaking Setswana, they seems to be not included here because we know for a fact that in Free State, it's Sesotho, Afrikaans, English, and isiZulu, if I'm not mistaken, yes, a little bit part of that. So it becomes a challenge when someone from Chivenda comes here, then we accommodate her or him in the university. So the language is going to be a challenge, but I think we are still going to get there. After the provincial earmarked languages, it's going to change. And after changing, it's going to give us a chance so that our inclusivity is become more practical.
Yes.
You can't just say, I'm included here, whereas I know for a fact if I speak isiXhosa, but isiXhosa is not given a chance here. But we know for a fact that there are provinces where isiXhosa has been given a chance, where it's predominantly been allowed to do whatever you want with isiXhosa. So hence I'm saying to you that we have to start with the languages that has been earmarked in our province. If we can start developing them, then I know for a fact that others, it will be easier for them to be developed also.
All right, then. What Prof is speaking to is, I think, the distinction that needs to be made in the usage and the development.
Yes.
So with the CUT's language policy, the main mandate will be the development of those languages, so that that will be developed can be shared with other universities for usage. When in the same space, those universities that will be developing isiXhosa, isiZulu, and Africans should be here as well, and other languages, they should be sharing the resources with CUT and other universities, so that we are using what has been developed, because it will be difficult for one university to develop everything in terms of the 12 official languages. But if we were to have this, and then we take that which has been developed, and that brings me to this aspect.
Yes, if I'm just checking there is a COPAL, community of language, all African languages.
Yes.
Every African languages is included there. So COPAL, I know for a fact we started with the development of policies for each university. So those COPAL, Sesotho COPAL, isiXhosa COPAL, they all gathered together, then presented their language policies.
Yes.
Hence I'm saying I do buy your idea that we start developing with us, then we share with other universities and see how it is done.
Yeah, Mrs. Dupree, it's very interesting in that Prof will talk to Sesotho specifically. I know Sesotho will be developed here, will be Sesotho at the UFS, Val, Northwest as well. And I think one university in the Eastern Cape.
Even Eastern Cape, yes.
Walter University, Walter, they've changed the name now. I don't know why.
Even Rhodes.
Yeah, Rhodes has Sesotho as well. Where do we put South African Sign Language? Ideally, to you. We're having 26 universities with a plan of having the 27th one sometime when the president is ready to have that one. He's been promising us that university, Exeter University in Gauteng, in Ekurhuleni, and people are fighting for that university, by the way, because we're trying to get promotions and things at new universities. But in your opinion, where will be an ideal position to develop South African Sign Language to be a language of teaching and learning like we develop in these other languages? Where, or at least, where is it already being developed to a point where we can actually look at them and request resources, so that we do not have to have another center for developing South African Sign Language, but we can go to VES, for instance, and say, we know we've been having 1, 2, 3, can we share? And then we start using from our side. Where do we go?
Okay, so that is also another interesting question, because it is something we are currently busy with.
Yes.
We are busy with South African Sign Language development. It is happening at a multitude of universities across the country. And what we try to do, because we don't have a cohort of 20 deaf students studying education, 20 law, 20. So at our university, we have someone studying education, specifically with a focus on technology, and we have someone studying office management. At UFS there was a law student. So we try and pool our resources, where University of the Free State will be developing law terminology, University of Northwest will be developing other terminology, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we have a new deaf student coming into our space and we don't have the terminology for that. So we try and pool our resources and share between the universities, because if you already developed terminology for education, why do we have to do it? Why do we have to struggle through classes and put that burden on our deaf student to help us with the terminology development? They are there to learn. They are not there to create a language so that they can learn. So that is why we try and work together to pool our resources and say, University of Witwatersrand, you had a student studying this. We have a first year student coming next year. Can you please share your resources with us? And we trade. That is also the ideal. It is difficult sometimes because people are very possessive. So they don't always want to share. But I think in the broader picture, we are not doing it for ourselves.
Definitely.
We are doing it for the equitable access for deaf students.
You see, the struggle you're talking to, Prof will attest to this. We have, and it will actually get me to your question to say, with the dialects, you know,
Yes.
we have Sesotho, for instance,
Yes.
that Sesotho in the Free State, in Bloemfontein and Botshabelo, you compare that Sesotho in Qwaqwa. Two different, and we have usage of two different words for the same thing. Like in Qwaqwa, I think, batlaunata, batlaunata, rona mo ra o shapa, rona mo ra papa ra o shapa. We have more, like those are simple things that when we develop in terminology, we're looking to this collaboration that though we are from different areas and different dialects, but we need to agree on certain things. What has been the challenge in South African Sign Language and saying, CUT, develop in office management, South African Sign Language terminology. How universal is that when it goes to a university in Cape Town?
Okay, so interesting question because we do have a lot of dialects in South Africa for South African Sign Language. There's a whole rich, deep history as to the reason why, but we have a lot of different dialects and we are looking at, for academic purposes, the standardization of terminology and sign language for the use in academic spaces. For that, we work through PANSALB. All of the universities work through PANSALB with the terminology that they develop to get it accredited and approved and accepted before we implement and before we share. So they are the authority making sure that there's a little bit of standardization going on. We cannot standardize the whole language. It is impossible because it's a living organism. It grows as the need arises, especially in the new age of technology. There's a need for growth in the language. So I don't think standardization is feasible across the country for day-to-day use, but in the academic sector, it is an important thing to consider, making sure that, you know, the terminology is out there for use.
Yeah, and Prof, what she's talking to is critical.
Yes.
In that we have the development of South African Sign Language, which to me will need to qualify for academic purposes. As we need to have a development of other indigenous languages for academic purposes. I always say there is no mother tongue of English academic language.
Yes.
We all meet it here when we get to the university. Even for home language users, the academic language is a special type of language. But we have a challenge when we're developing our languages. We don't want them to be academic. We want them to be this communicative languages where everyone understands everything as they see it. The first time they see it, they know it. You know, when you come with a term, someone is like, we don't know that term. Of course you don't know it because you don't belong in that particular field. Simone says they're working with PANSALB to make sure that the authentication and standardization of this South African Sign Language terminology happens.
Yes.
But we've been experiencing challenges with the same PANSALB for indigenous languages for a very long time, where the same PANSALB will come to CUT, do a particular terminology project, authenticate, standardize, authenticate, go to VAL for Sesotho, the same, and then they do, but the terms are different, and they still acknowledge that is a standard language for academic purposes. What is wrong? How do we fix it? When I was speaking to at some conference, I said, we have a documentation crisis at PANSALB, where they do not have a system where if they enter a particular term in law, it says has been done by CUT 2026, authenticated, done. So whoever wants to develop that, use this as opposed to starting from scratch. We are all paper-based, and I think that is my problem. What could be the issue or other issues in terms of the standardization and validation of these languages that we're developing?
Thank you, Doc, for raising this. I think it has been a problem for quite some time. Like Preez just said here, you know what? The problem is that whenever terminology has been developed, authenticated by the very same, standardized by the very same body, language body, it needs to be put into the internet so that everyone can have access for it. I can quite vividly remember that was in 2020 when different structures wanted to develop soccer terminology. And the very same soccer terminology of 3 structures has to be authenticated by the very same pencil. But when you look at those documents, they're not the same.
Yes.
That's where the problem is. Should we have the first document that has been authenticated and put into the internet and distributed to every Sesotho speaker? Then we know for a fact if someone needs that type of document, where to go. But there are so many scattered.
Yes.
They are just inventing the wheel, and the very same language body who has to standardize them allows it. If you know for a fact that this kind of terminology was standardized, why should we start with another project? Unless it is augmenting that one, yes. So I think the problem is that we have been doing terminology for quite some time, but it is not known, which is part of the problems when coming to terminology development. After terminology has been harvested, developed, the last phase, it has to be known by the language users.
Yes.
That's how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, no, we hear. You know, when we're talking to terminology, by the way, I know terminology, the soccer terminology from the Department of Arts and Culture, and this is where it becomes embarrassing, right? Department of Arts and Culture, at the time DAC, now they have sports and everything else.
Yes.
And National Office, they have their own soccer terminology. Department of Arts and Culture, Free State Provincial Office, they have their own soccer terminology for 2010. And I think there is a municipality that developed their own terminology. In Sesotho, you look at those terms, for soccer, at least football will be almost similar. But there are certain things that like free kick, corner kick. Yeah. Someone will say it's something else. Someone will say it's something else. But we're trying to standardize so that everyone understands that which is spoken to. Let's leave that. We're saying in higher education, one key pillar of higher education becomes research. And we need to look at South African Sign Language and its officiation and inclusion within the multilingual language policy of the university as an opportunity to look at research and the trajectory of research in a different way. To you, Prof, looking at your research capabilities and all that, having South African Sign Language officialized in South Africa and within the university space, what does that open for research in this that is new to us, new to the university, because we should be seeing papers left, right, and center about this new baby that we have, about accommodating this South African Sign Language and the community thereof, and also the challenges of culture that it comes with. What can we do? What do you foresee in terms of research within the university?
Yes, thank you so much, Doc. I foresee a lot of, I would say, advantages of making our research grow.
Yes.
Before, South African language, sign language was not even used to other people who cannot sign. It was just an outcast outside. No one could ever see. It was just, I'm not quite sure whether it was this year or last year, I attended online South African Sign Language. It was presented a webinar. Then I also feel very hurt that we are not even exposed to this kind of people. How do they live? What kind of the challenges they come across? How can we be part of it? Maybe knows how to assist them. But because there were no forums where we have been taken, since we have they've been included to be the 12th language, I think we can collaborate with so many. May is here.
Yes.
Yes, we can collaborate since it's a language by itself. So language, once I'm in that field of language, we can do a research with the very same deaf people.
The challenge is there that we need to collaborate. But the key is within the university, we have the scholarship of teaching and learning.
Yes.
Where specifically we look at issues and challenges and how then we teach and learn within the university space.
Yes.
Hey, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking we should be seeing papers within the university space that specifically look at teaching and learning in terms of scholarship of teaching and learning within that particular conference, looking at South African Sign Language, deaf students. We have now 2.
Yes.
What like we should be having from the lecturers that are actually part and parcel of that, the lecture halls, the interpreters that go to the lecture halls on a daily basis. What are the challenges? Why are we not writing? And that is a question that, why are you not writing, Mrs. Dupree? what could be the challenge? Because like Prof is saying, it should be a collaboration because alone they're sitting there or as an interpreter interpreting there, you might not be privy to certain things that could make the paper more meaningful for you in that particular module. What is happening within CUT that we're not collaborating to a point where we can have outputs that are beneficial to scholarship of teaching and learning?
I think a lot of people are intimidated by sign language.
Oh, yes.
If they do not know the language, they feel like also they can't do research in the language,
Yes.
which is fair. It is fair, but it closes doors.
Yes.
It closes doors for the research and for the outputs and for establishing the environment that we choose and want to establish. I myself have submitted 2 abstracts to speaking specifically about the scholarship of South African Sign Language and how accommodation needs, what it needs to look like, how it works, apart from just the ticking of boxes and putting an interpreter there. Yes, that is important, but that is the bare minimum.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people feel intimidated by sign language, do not know where to start, and I've not been approached, which I feel is a shame, because there's a big gap in South Africa with research regarding South African Sign Language, specifically in higher education. A lot has been done in the education sector in general, again, not enough, but there's a humongous gap in higher education research. And I think we are in a unique position. We have the case study in front of us. We are here. We have resources. We have interpreters that we can speak to deaf students. We can speak to people who know the language with a background in language practice. I think it's a missed opportunity if we don't use it, especially because we have to rely so many times on international research. I think that is the case for a lot of the research that is happening in South Africa. We don't have things talking to what we need to talk to. So we rely heavily on things out of our context. But we have the context.
But
we should now write about it.
El Professor?
Yes.
We are a university, one of the few universities in South Africa that we do not even have one, either a dissertation or a thesis in any indigenous language at CUT. All our papers, all our master's and doctoral outputs are in English.
Yes.
What do? We have a language policy that says you can write in any indigenous language within the South African landscape.
Yes.
But you have not written anything, Prof, with your students. What is wrong? What can we do to make you right? Because, when we take it to say CUT has not written, we forget that we are CUT. We have you as a leader, as a full professor, as an advocate of indigenous languages, but you don't even have one student who has written or at least who is busy writing in any of the official languages of the country. I know the policy, the new policy and the implementation plan that actually says that was adopted, I think, by Council in 2024, late 2024. So we're still early. We should be saying in a year we are graduating the first one. How far are we? What have we done? What have you done specifically to make sure that in the next 3-5 years, at least we have the first one?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. I think it's a very good question. Let me start by saying that I do have 2 chapters written in Sesotho. Last year, the 5th of September, we were launching a book that is written in Sesotho. That was the collaboration from the University of Cape Town, University of Lesotho, as well as other colleagues from Britain. So it was a collaboration. Now we are at the 3rd book of that series that is written. So it's a collaboration of research that has been done but presented in Sesotho. So I think we are still on the right track, Doc. It's going to be done. Just give me, even before 5 years, we will have in 2 dissertations or even 3 dissertations.
I'm hoping that you're going to include that in the strategic plan as well.
Yes.
We're going to have 2. Because
Yes.
the strategy will talk to the research outputs
Yes.
as a key driver as well in terms of the finances and the funding, because universities, I think, don't get a whole lot of money for producing this, the masters, your dissertations, your articles as well. There is something that comes to the university, but at least they're intentional in that.
Yes.
Can we be intentional in making one of those outputs an indigenous language? Could be South African Sign Language. I'm super interested in getting to know how that one was presented, because my interest is what can we do from our side as well to make sure that those students that we have, the 2 students that we have, by the time they do their 4th year, 5th year, and then they go to masters, they have now been trained in how they can develop their own masters and dissertations without having to convince them to do Winene, because that's the only language they speak.
Yes.
Exactly.
If I can add into that, that is the ideal for a deaf student, is to be able to do their assessments in their own language.
Yes.
That is what we are fighting for. But okay, yeah, that is
All right. No. We keep on. We keep fighting. We keep fighting. Yes, Prof.
Let me just chip there, because most as we know for a fact, when we are at the institution of higher learning,
Yes.
when you produce a research, it has to end up being giving the university something.
Yes.
So the DHET do have their own journals. So even some of the written, if they are written in Sesotho, the DHET does not even have anything to pay for them. So you see, our struggle, our challenges is not only basically as to how to develop the indigenous language. We also have to escalate this war or challenge to the DHET itself. CH, I know for a fact that CHE is pro-indigenous languages, but DHET doesn't see it that way. You can just produce any research and put it in any journal of your choice. It has to be accredited journal. Hence, the chapters that we wrote were not even paid for.
Yes.
Yes.
We're having a writing retreat in July, the 22nd and the 23rd of July. One will be in Bloemfontein campus, the other one in the Welkom campus.
Okay.
Specifically looking at multilingual writing in terms of research, and also publication and opportunities and challenges.
Yes.
So I think I will actually urge the CUT community to look at that and for these questions to be asked, so that when we have that report, we can take it to DHET and say, you've given us some funds in terms of the UCDG to develop languages, to develop research capabilities, but you're not actually giving them the rights that they deserve as well. But I appreciate you bringing that up, but it's something that after we do the retreats, then we'll have a report that when we report into them in terms of the finances that they are giving us for the past 3 years, we can now say, but now the challenge is this and this, and we need to look at it. Ms. Simone, nothing about us without us. As a CUT, what does it mean when we talk about that in terms of these indigenous languages? Not specific, let's not take it to South African Sign Language, but indigenous languages, including South African Sign Languages. We're saying nothing about us without us. What do we mean?
In short, we come and we find the policies here.
Yes.
The policies were not written with us included.
Yes.
So it is already something about us without us. Nothing about us without us means our voices need to be there. We need to be consulted. You cannot make provision for someone if you have not consulted that person. You cannot include someone if you don't know how they want to be included. In short, the most basic answer to that question is that you cannot. Yeah.
When we have answered that question, then we say, we talk transformation on a daily basis. We want to see a transformed university. We want to be a transformed university. We want to be a transformed higher education sector in general. How does a transformed higher education or CUT look like in terms of linguistic representation? How does it look like? What happens within the university space? What are we seeing when we get to CUT, Prof, that we're saying truly we are transformed? Because we always talk about we need transformation. Others will actually limit it to transformation in the lecture hall. Others will limit it to transformation in policies, translating policies. There's so many ways to look at it. But the core of transformation, linguistic justice, linguistic transformation, multilingual accommodation, to say we truly are a transformed university. It might not happen tomorrow, but in 5 years, 10 years, to sit here and say, oh, wow, we are a transformed university. How do we look? What do we do? How do we do it?
Thank you so much for the question, Doc. I think on my side, I would say that that's normally one of the questions that I often ask even to my student. How many languages can you speak?
Yes.
Yes, if you can say, even if you don't understand, fluency of the language itself, but you can understand the message that has been imparted to you by other languages. If you can do that for 4 languages, then I would say that, yes, you are in the institution that is well transformed. If you can have access of information in one of the language of your choices, then that's it. I will take it. If you get to the library, you said, I need a book written in Sesotho. You find it, you get to, I need a book written in Afrikaans.
Yeah.
You had access of that one. That's more that we can get. Starting linguistically, I would say that if you can also express yourself in the university. Normally, before I forget that one, we had a project with the University of Free State, whereby specifically this project was earmarked for staff, where we are going to do the video for language conversation only. It is written in Sesotho, English, and Afrikaans. Maybe basically every word, maybe even to ask a full tank at the petrol station with the indigenous language. It is written, it has been run by Dr. Choice Macheta. He was running it. It was from the office of the DVC.
Okay.
Yes, I mean the VC, yes. So that kind of conversation, every one of the staff can communicate briefly with Sesotho, Dumela, Uhokai. Everyone can communicate in Afrikaans. That is how it's supposed to be done, like that.
I nearly said, I guess,
Exactly.
we're not there, we're here. So, you see, that's the danger of doing certain things in isolation. In that there'll be other people who are not aware that there is this opportunity that is there for them to learn. I'll make an example. Within the LDSU, we are busy with the development of a conversational Sesotho for staff and students who may not necessarily have Sesotho as a home language or at least proficiency in Sesotho. But we want to do that again in Afrikaans to say, if we can come with Sesotho, because Simone should be, as a staff member, should be able to say Dumela.
Exactly.
So that if a mother of a disabled student comes to the center and then they want to communicate with her, the basic they can say is Dumela, Tatamanyarela, upstairs.
Yes.
At least we can get somewhere. But now the issue is, Simone, this is just a teaser for you. How many languages can you speak?
4.
Apart from South African Sign Language.
3.
I know that one you're going to go there and say South African Sign Language. Okay, let's include it. Let's include it.
It should be included also.
4. And they are?
Afrikaans, English, South African Sign Language, and don't shoot me, German.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And you're not short at all. It's fine. Prof, I know with your name, Pule.
Yes.
Will tell you that as a Sesotho name. Alexis,
yes.
English.
Yes.
And then Phindane is Xhosa.
Yes.
So you should be, at least those 3, you should actually be okay with them.
Yeah.
But I've heard you speak Afrikaans and proper Afrikaans.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
In actual fact, I study Afrikaans until 3rd year level.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So you can speak Afrikaans
I
praat?
can Afrikaans praat.
How? We should have done the podcast in Afrikaans then. How? Come on.
Yes.
I want us to actually get to a point where I want us to get to a point where we're going to conclude our discussions. But before we get there, we need to look at CUT. Someone's going to watch this production and say, what is it that I'm taking away from this conversation? The LDSU, we will have a number of activities planned for the year, planning for the next 3 years as well. In your portfolio, in your experience and what you're bringing to the university, if we look into a plan for the language development and support unit, to support the university and to support you specifically, what should be some of the things that are included in the plan for the next 3 years so that you also feel you are part and parcel of what the LDSU is doing, because it's a service unit, but it cannot service itself and it cannot plan for itself as well. From your portfolio, from your faculty, department, what can the LDSU do, or at least include in the 3-year plan going forward to accommodate and make sure that you also have a voice within what they are doing?
It's a I would say it's a journey or a trip, because it's not something that you can get so quickly as you can. We know we're coming far from the University of Technology. We are still struggling to be the comprehensive. In fact, we are running the race together with the comprehensive universities,
yes,
which is quite different from us. I will say that we are doing quite right up to so far, but what I want to see is that the issue of including inclusivity, it should be in practical, not as a theoretical or maybe just a theory. If we are saying that we are including the disability or the deaf people, let the whole community of CUT, the inhabitants of CUT, have a clear sense how the deaf feel. What changes can I do? Or even I will say that for the mere fact that the disabled people, they've been classified as disabled people, how are we supposed to be nearer them, to assist them, to feel them, to be in par with them, so that we cannot see them as being excluded from other students? We need that platform. In terms of the workshops, in terms of the road workshops that we can just do amongst the campus, it's so disheartening to hear that there is a meeting for disabled people, but excuse me, the invitation is not extended to the people that are able. How are we going to know how do they suffer, what they need to us? You get to other countries like Portugal, Spain, you see those people that even put colors to show them that these are disabled people. But when you get to them, they even assist you with their phone. They just give you the phone, you just type in the letters there to speak to them, they respond to you. So in other words, we are the community they are the community within ourselves, not just those people who have been banded disabled, labeled disabled, as if they are not able to do whatever we can do. So that's what I need.
Yes. All right. We will do better. I'm coming to you. Don't worry. I'm coming to you. You're going to answer the same question as well. But we're going to do better, Simone.
We are.
Because I think when it comes to disability, language, and linguistic justice, we are responsible for that. We should do better. Ne? So how can I help you? Yes, Simone.
I just want to respond to Prof and say that we are currently running a South African Sign Language short course, like the Afrikaans and the Sesotho ones as well, for people with no background. It is aimed at staff and students. And our next intake, we are focusing on support staff because our students with disabilities reside in the residences. We are aiming, the residence is not limited to them, but we are aiming at the residences for the cleaning staff there, because they are the ones in contact with the students on a day-to-day, to be able to have the basic conversations. Apart from that, we have a few intakes of that planned for the rest of the year. We've already had 2. We do what we call South African Sign Language integration trainings, where we visit departments and faculties and, for example, the clinic and wellness and protection services, where we aim to create awareness. We do a basic sign language training. Just the hi, how are you? I can spell my name. That is more for awareness than for the language retention. But creating awareness on the disabilities in general as well, with a small little focus on our deaf students and the deaf community. Then we also do disability trainings, disability awarenesses, where we talk to the broader disability community. That we also do in targeted groups. Or if there's a need for that, someone can reach out to us and say, our department has an interest in this. Do you have something that you can offer us? We are doing that, and we have our awareness campaigns that run across. But I want to just emphasize that it is happening. We are building. It is not as visible as we want it to be. We need to work on that. And again, with Prof saying that it is needed, it means that we are not visible enough in our efforts. So we are working, and thank you for that feedback. It is the feedback that we don't normally get because you are not in that workshops to be able to give us that feedback. So it's important to hear the feedback from the broader community. But our aim is to create an environment, a holistic university environment that is inclusive, meaning everyone knows a little bit to get by.
Hello, Professor. Let's end it here. Ne?
Okay.
If you were to leave the CUT community with a message regarding linguistic equity, accessibility, and inclusive transformation, what do you say to our community?
It's a little bit difficult. It's a challenging one. Yes, I can say that since we've got the 12th language that has been given to us, let's not shy away to get involved in developing it. Whatever, with any mechanism that we can utilize to be part of it. Because these 3 languages, Afrikaans, Sotho, and English, I know for a fact we are at a little bit higher on the development. Just here and there where we need to strengthen the language practices. But when coming to the sign language, we are left behind, we are far behind. And most of us don't even know anything about the sign language. So I'm glad that it has been given that chance of being part of the 12th language. So I think that's what I can look at it, that this is supposed to be the challenge that I should have been part of it.
Yes.
Yes, because when I am saying language, even whenever there is someone who wants to do a research, when they said language, they said, Prof. Phindane is here, he will assist you with language. Then what will happen if someone says, I'm interested in sign language? They will say, Prof. Phindane is there. Who's Prof. Phindane in terms of sign language? So, ma'am, I'm going to knock at your door to be part of it and know more about the sign language.
Yes, please do knock, hey, but know at least how to knock in South African sign language. Don't just knock. Simone, your parting shots, right? The message that when you talk about deaf community, deaf culture, and deaf inclusion in terms of the students that we do have in the university space, what are we saying to our community so that at least there's one thing that they know they need to remember when it comes to that? What is it that you're leaving them with?
Again, I think, thank you. It's an important question. It's an important statement. And I think most importantly, inclusion should not depend on how hard a student has to fight for it. Inclusion should not be optional. And that it doesn't matter what that looks like, if it's for Indigenous languages, if it's for South African Sign Language, if it's for disability. Inclusion means inclusion. It's not person specific, and it should not be optional. And we do not need, we should not need to fight so hard for it.
Thank you very much. Let me maybe then do a quick wrap up here to say today's discussion, and if you don't agree, please do say that it reminds us that inclusion is not charity, and that for me is super important. That when we talk about inclusion, whether South African Sign Language, Sotho Afrikaans, English, Xhosa, and isiZulu, any language, we're not talking about charity, and we should not be treated like we are looking for charity. Language remains deeply connected to identity, dignity, belonging, and access to knowledge, and we need to have a university that makes sure, because we are a university, knowledge is what we have promised the students, promised our country as well, and we need to make sure that that knowledge goes out in a way that we want it to go in. On behalf of the Language Development and Support Unit, we extend sincere appreciation, of course, to our esteemed guests, Professor Phindane from the Faculty of Humanities, a full professor. That sometimes we say professor when we are associate. For now, we want to make sure a full professor in Indigenous languages and especially the development and promotion of Sesotho. We truly appreciate your coming and sharing your expertise with us. And
thank you so much.
Simone Dupree, Disability Communication Officer from the Disability Unit within the Center in Innovation and Learning, or in Innovation for Teaching.
Learning and Teaching.
Center?
for innovation
in learning and teaching. SILT in short. Yes, thank you very much for being a part and parcel of this particular discussion, and we truly hope that our community will benefit a lot from your insight.
Thank you very much.
Let me also thank our South African Sign Language interpreter, Re lebohile haholo kgaitsedi ya motho o re thusitse shaba sa rona se tla fumana lesedi ka tsela e nepahetseng. As always, the Zeta production team, we thank you very much for your support and the professionalism that we always see when you're helping us with this production. Communications and marketing, we truly appreciate your efforts and support in this endeavor. But most importantly, let me thank the team that I work with, the Language Development and Support Unit team. Contributing to this conversation has been a great thing. That then, ladies and gentlemen, marks the end of another production of the Cutting Talks podcast, the second of the year, and we move on, we go forward. Harere Basotho bohle banoleki pula haele chayona iholele bohle iatele shaba sa heso re a leboha.
Au bejwa.
Thank you. Thank you very much.